People are very surprised by the fact that this tiny house is less than 300 square feet, yet I have everything that I need. I do not see myself getting rid of this property anytime soon. This tiny house is definitely like a baby to me. Hi, welcome to my tiny house in Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Precious Price. I am 26 years old and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I built a tiny house in my backyard for about $35,000. I decided to build this tiny home because my house, my 3-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom house, felt too large for me. After looking in the backyard, realizing that, hey, if I put a tiny house back there, I'll be able to move in and then I can fully rent this house out. I purchased this property that the tiny house sits behind in October of 2019, and the purchase price for this home was $196,000. I was renting the primary structure full-time because I was working as a consultant and traveling during the week. So I had the flexibility to rent it out at least Monday through Fridays. So the initial plan for the tiny house was in the middle of the global pandemic. So I actually did have a good amount of money saved. I was already doing short-term rentals within my primary home for about 6 months. Once we were able to get started with the build and I was able to begin renting out the home again, I pretty much just used those funds or those earnings from Airbnb to then go toward this structure and finishing it. When I started building the tiny house, how I financed it was through my own credit cards in addition to cashing out a few of the stocks that I had from my 9-to-5. So my budget for building the tiny house was about $25,000. By the time we finished, we were over budget $10,000 and spent total $35,000 on the tiny house. As the initial contractors were kind of getting through the work, I could slightly tell that some things were being done wrong, but because I was not familiar with this process or I had never gone through anything like this, I let it go on a little further than it needed to, and that is why we lost a little bit of money in the beginning. In addition to that, I would say another major mistake was actually how we were purchasing materials. I purchased a lot up front, including some wood for handmade cabinets that you can probably clearly see we did not do handmade cabinets at all, and that was a mistake and a cost on my end. Originally, the tiny house was for me, but after going through the build process, being over budget, behind schedule, we immediately ended up deciding to rent it on Airbnb just to recoup some of those costs pretty quickly. First year we did short-term rentals, second year we did long-term rentals. And now I've decided to move into the tiny house myself just to experience some tiny living in addition to saving some cash as well. If I was to describe my tiny home for someone who has never been here, I would literally just describe it as a studio apartment. So immediately when you come in, you are now in the dining/living room. I would describe the tiny house as very light, airy, open. I made sure to add a ton of windows just to open the space up, and even more so, actually adding in mirrors as well to really make it feel larger. So the blues kind of gives like a cool feel, but also again, just opens up the space so that you don't feel like you're just in a shed. You actually feel like you're in a house. I love this little breakfast nook area. It's usually where I'm grabbing drinks. Once you come around here and through, you are then in the kitchen. The kitchen is honestly my favorite part of the house because a lot of people are really surprised that there is, for the most part, a full-size fridge. We have an induction cooktop within the kitchen, in addition to a full-size sink. And then there's a ton of counter space. At least for me, it's a pretty good amount. Right across from the kitchen is where we have the bathroom that then slides closed and open for the barn door, which honestly creates a really cool space as well. So when we step into the bathroom, we're immediately met with these glass shower doors. It was imperative for me to put glass doors here just because it opens up the space. You're able to see through and it doesn't feel as small. There's a full shower, which is honestly perfect, and a little window as well, just because again, every single space must have windows to just make it feel bigger. And then coming around, just adding more shelf space as well, just so that I can store even more. And of course, once you turn around from that bathroom, you then see the library ladder, which leads up to the loft. One thing that I don't particularly enjoy about the tiny home is the clearance within the loft. All you can really do up there is lay down and sleep. I would love it if there was a little more clearance and a little more space for me, at least to sit upright and maybe have a little bookshelf up there as well. So it's pretty spacious, honestly. The folks in the primary home totally have privacy from the people in the tiny house. There's actually even a separate trail or entrance on the other side of the house that folks who are renting the tiny home can then use to access the house. So they totally actually don't even interact for the most part, outside of if they want to share the fire pit access in the backyard. I do have a mortgage on this home currently, and the price that I pay per month for that mortgage is about $1,200. With renting the home out how I am now, the renters or the tenants actually pay that mortgage cost and then some. So the main house, it's a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom home that I rent out as separate suites, so 3 separate suites. Each suite costs anywhere between about $850 to $1,000 per month, depending on whether or not there is a private bathroom or a shared bathroom. So now being in the tiny house myself, in addition to saving costs, which was a major driver for me moving back here, the other piece was actually getting ready to start the next project or build that I'd like to do on this lot. I do have the option to extend the livable space that I have within the primary home. So at that point, we would have the primary house, the attached guest suite, and then of course this tiny house that sits in the backyard. Honestly, putting a structure in your backyard provides a ton of options, whether it's actual rental income like I've been able to do, or even again, just like a secondary structure that you may be able to live out of yourself and then rent your primary home. In addition to just the options I'm super excited that it's gonna create for my family long term in terms of maybe some multi-generational living down the line.